Have you ever stopped to think about your morning coffee? Or, hey, the screen you're watching this on right now, all the electricity that's powering it? None of this stuff would even be possible without this sort of silent global handshake, a quiet agreement between millions of strangers who will never ever meet. So in this explainer, we're going to pull back the curtain on the invisible architecture of our world, these shared standards that, honestly, turn chaos into cooperation.
Okay, let's really think about this for a second. It's a genuine economic mystery when you get down to it. I mean, how does coffee from one continent end up in your cup on another? How do all these tiny parts from a dozen different countries come together to build the phone that's in your pocket? All of this relies on an absolutely incredible amount of cooperation. So what's the secret? How does it all actually work?
Well, the answer isn't some single powerful leader or a big world government. No, it's something much quieter, and honestly, way more powerful. It's this huge web of invisible agreements, you could call it a soft infrastructure, that underpins pretty much every single transaction we make. And the tool that we use to build this web of trust, it's deceptively simple.
That tool is the humble standard. I mean, just think about it. A simple, shared rule that makes all of our separate decisions compatible with each other. It's kind of the magic ingredient that turns millions of individual actions into this beautifully coordinated dance, all without a single choreographer yelling out the steps. But, okay, how does a simple rule actually create tangible value? Let's follow the money, right? Let's see how a shared agreement can transform a world of pure guesswork into one of predictable and, profitable cooperation. The most crucial point to get is this. Uncertainty is incredibly expensive, like wildly expensive. When a buyer isn't sure about the quality of a product, or a lender is worried a borrower might default, everybody ends up paying for it. We pay in delays, we pay for extra inspections, and we pay in the endless, tedious work of checking things that should just be simple. And this comparison right here really shows the true power of a standard. On one side, you've got this world of tangled guesswork where every single transaction is a gamble. But on the other side, after a standard, you have a clear bridge. A standard is basically a shared shortcut that just slashes the cost of doing business because everyone agrees on what the rules are.
So a successful standard really works its magic through 4 key mechanisms. First, it's a signal, broadcasting credible info far and wide. Second, it creates incentives, rewarding anyone who follows the rules with access to better markets. Third, it has network effects. Like a language, it just gets more valuable the more people use it. And fourth, it needs some kind of governance to maintain the rules and keep them from getting outdated. All right, theory's one thing, but let's see how this stuff actually plays out in the real world. We're going to walk through the typical life cycle of a standard, and you'll see this universal pattern of how trust is born, how it's built, and sometimes how it gets broken. This journey almost always follows the same path. It kicks off in chaos, total confusion, lots of disputes. Then a baseline rule starts to emerge, usually pushed by a few key players. As it gets adopted, you see a clear split. The early adopters start to benefit, and the latecomers get left behind. And that, of course, leads to the big governance questions, like who's actually in charge here? And then finally, you often hit this compatibility scare, where some new update threatens to break the very system everyone now depends on.
But here's the really crucial truth. Standards are not some rising tide that lifts all boats. Nope. As you can see here, they create very clear winners and very clear losers. The certified firms, they get a golden ticket to premium markets. Meanwhile, smaller producers can get completely locked out, stuck facing a compliance barrier that's just way too high for them to climb.
And that brings us to a huge takeaway. Standards are never, ever neutral. By defining what's in and what's out, they create gates. And whenever there's a gate, the person holding the key, the certifier, the auditor, the governing body, well, they suddenly have an immense amount of power. So we've seen how standards can create value. But every tool has a shadow side, right? The very act of drawing a line to include some people, well, by definition, it excludes others. And in that exclusion, that's where the hidden danger lies. So let's start with the first big risk. By creating a single accepted way of doing things, do we run the risk of just shutting down the search for a better way?
I mean, can these rules actually freeze progress right in its tracks? The short answer? Oh yeah, absolutely. If the whole governance process is too slow, the standard can fall way behind new technology. It can also create this powerful incentive not to experiment, because hey, anything outside the rule is automatically seen as risky. And over time, this can lock an entire industry into a solution that, well, just isn't the best one anymore.
Now, the second risk is even more concerning. Can these supposedly neutral tools of cooperation be turned into weapons of economic competition?
And the answer, of course, is yes. A standard can totally be weaponized. You can selectively enforce it against outsiders while giving your buddies, the insiders, a pass. It can be designed with these intentionally high barriers to entry just to protect the existing players from any new competition. And if you adopt an external standard, it can mean that local producers lose control over their own definitions of quality.
So it all really boils down to two huge questions of power and governance. Who gets to decide what quality even means? And once that decision is locked into a standard, how easily can it be changed? The answers to those two questions pretty much determine who wins and who loses.
Okay, so we've seen the mechanics and we've seen the risks. What does this all mean for us today in our totally interconnected world? Let's try to distill this all down to 4 key principles for building trust.
First up, clarity is basically currency. Just think about it from an investor's point of view. Where are you going to put your money? In a confusing, unpredictable market, or in one where quality is clearly defined and you can actually verify it? Standards make a market legible, right? They turn these fuzzy risks into calculated bets. And in the global economy, money always follows clarity. Second lesson, a standard is a garden, not a statue. I love that. You can't just build it and walk away. Technology evolves, markets shift, new challenges pop up. A rule that was perfect 10 years ago can become a total roadblock today. So the value of a standard is directly tied to the constant, ongoing work of maintenance and stewardship needed to keep it alive and relevant. Number 3 is all about the process. Think about it. Why do we follow rules that maybe we don't personally love? It's because we trust the system that created them. For a standard to really work, the governance behind it has to be seen as fair and transparent. When people feel like the game isn't rigged, they're willing to play by the rules. At the end of the day, trust in the system is what creates trust in the outcome.
And finally, our 4th lesson, you have to design for evolution, not for perfection. Look, the smartest rule makers out there know they can't predict the future, so the most robust, long-lasting standards are designed with a bit of humility. They don't try to be the final word on everything. Instead, they build in escape hatches and upgrade paths, leaving room for the whole system to adapt and evolve as the world inevitably changes around it.
In the end, this is really the magic of a well-designed standard. It's almost like an act of social alchemy. These quiet, invisible agreements, they're never perfect, they're never final, but when they're designed with care and when they're governed with fairness, they do something truly remarkable. They turn risk into possibility and they turn friction into flow.